welcome back accounting students to our final segment in today's show. Remember, we were busy looking at year-end adjustments and we completed the current account note. We're now moving on to an adjustment that affects stationery. So let's look at the next adjustment. Right, so the information that is given to me, I'm required to show the effect of the following year-end adjustment on stationery in the statement of comprehensive income. I'm given a balance as per the pre-adjustment trial balance at the end of the year, 28th of Feb 2021. Then I've got consumables on hand, stationery, 1st of March 2020, so obviously at the beginning of the year, there is stationery on hand, 450 Rand. Then stationery that was purchased in this financial year, an amount of 16,800. So let's read on. Right, my year-end adjustments affecting stationery, the accountant forgot to reverse the stationery on hand at the beginning of the year. So this is something we already know because we never come across consumables on hand at the end of the year, right? Normally this is reversed, but clearly this has not happened. Right, next adjustment, partner Vish took stationery 800 Rand for personal use. And then finally, stationery on hand at the end of the current financial year amounted to 1,000 Rand. Right, now in order for you guys to understand this adjustment or these adjustments in detail, I would prefer to draw up our ledger accounts, stationery, as well as an account for consumables on hand. So let's start by just bringing down the balances for each. So let's start with consumables on hand, obviously an asset. So at the beginning of the year, stationery on hand, not reversed, an amount of 450 Rand. So let's just take that through, right? So on hand, 450. And then stationery purchased for the entire year, an amount of 16,800. So I just want to take that through to the ledger as well, 16,800. Right, so let's start with our very first adjustment where the accountant forgot to reverse the stationery on hand at the beginning of the year. Now, what does this mean in very simple terms? At the end of last year, there was unused stationery, probably locked away in the cupboard or in the storeroom, amounting to 450 Rand. Now remember, unused stationery obviously becomes an asset for the business. But this was at the end of last year. Now, if you think about the current financial year, that unused stationery is not going to stay locked up in the cupboard, it's going to get used. Right? Obviously, that stationery will be taken by the employees and they're going to use the stationery. So at the beginning of the financial year, the accounting procedure is reverse this entry. In other words, it's no longer going to be an asset, make it an expense. So we have to transfer 450 Rand back to our stationery ledger account. Now, how does this affect your financial statements? Because that's what you are interested in. So at the beginning of the year, right, remember consumables on hand, because it should be reversed, in your inventory note, you are not going to show the 450 Rand. I'm obviously talking about your inventory, right, your balance sheet note or statement of financial position for the year end 2021. So you will not show consumables on hand 450. Okay, you guys got that. Right, stationery, obviously by transferring 450, my expense now increases by 450. So in your statement of comprehensive income. In the income statement, we are now adding the 450. In fact, let's do that because that's part of our answer. Right, so stationery, we started off with 16,800. We're now adding that reversal that should have taken place but didn't. We're adding the 450. Okay, right, so that's the first part to the adjustment. Let's now look at the next part. Partner Vish took stationery for 800 Rand for personal use, obviously for his own use. So because this is not a business expense, once again, we're going to have to make a relevant entry in our ledger account. So remember, stationery will be credited by 800 Rand, right? And the other account affected is obviously drawings for Partner Vish, where his drawings will increase by 800 Rand. Right, guys, I just want to make it very, very clear that this adjustment does not affect, right? Remember, we did a current account note earlier on, but I just want to make sure that no one gets confused. I wasn't given this adjustment for that question. So that is why I didn't include the 800 Rand. This is now something completely separate, and I don't want you guys to get confused. So just to make that, just to clarify that. Right, so 800 Rand, I'm obviously now going to remove the 800 Rand from stationery. It's not a business expense because it's being taken away by the partner for personal use. So let's do that. We're obviously minusing 800 Rand. Okay, right, let's move on to our final adjustment. Stationery on hand at the end of the current financial year amounted to 1,000 Rand, right? So let's quickly look at that. So that 1,000 Rand, remember, this is now my stationery on hand at the end of the year. So in other words, unused stationery, an amount of 1,000 Rand that needs to be transferred to consumables on hand. Because it was not used, this is now going to get locked away in the cupboard. It's unused stationery, or it's the stationery still in the cupboard at the end of the year, and that 1,000 becomes an asset. So how does it affect my expense? Obviously, I'm going to subtract the 1,000 Rand. Okay, right, so let's do that on our answer sheet, minus 1,000 Rand. Right, and our stationery expense for the year, if we just quickly grab the calculator, so our expense for this financial year, 16,800 plus the 450 that we reversed, minus the 800 that Vish took for personal use, and minus the unused stationery, minus the 1,000 Rand. So our expense for this financial year, 15,450. So 15,450. Okay, right, and that's it with this adjustment, although I do want to quickly just go back, guys, right, because I just want to make sure that no one is confused. Right, so remember this 800, had it been one comprehensive exercise where I was continuing from the previous exercise to this, I know with the names it might sound like, but hang on Mahesh, it seems like you're continuing, right? If I was continuing, remember that 800 would then be added to Vish's drawings account. Okay, but remember, I didn't get this adjustment when I was doing the current account. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, guys. Right, it seems as though we've come to the end of our lesson. So very quickly, guys, remember, you're going to get a whole lot of year-end adjustments that you need to practice from. And the more you guys are going to practice, the better you're going to be at year-end adjustments. But what do I want you to take out of today's lesson? So remember, to summarize, make sure you know the format of your capital and current account note. Obviously, this affects partnerships directly. And then make sure, exactly what I mentioned a few seconds ago, that you are practicing your year-end adjustments. All your year-end adjustments, the ones you did in grade 10, as well as the additional adjustments, asset disposal, provision for bad debts adjustment, and so on. Make sure that you guys practice. Right, also calculations, practice these as well in respect of interest and capital, drawings, shading of remaining profit, salaries, and so on. And very, very important, I think I say this at the end of every lesson, make sure you read your given information carefully. Make sure you're able to analyze and interpret that information. Okay, right, and like I said earlier on, we've come to the end of our lesson for today's lesson. Obviously, we've covered quite a bit already, but I want you guys, just promise me you're going to practice, because the more you practice, the better you're going to get in terms of your accounting. Remember, as accounting students, I cannot open a book and simply look at the book. I've got to physically practice. Okay, so that's it from me, Mahesh Lal. Until we meet again, it's goodbye and God bless, and please be safe.